I just want to talk a little bit today about ego and how that could potentially limit our growth when we're going on our authentic path. I think the one thing that really came through when we did the live last week is that there were comments about triggers and what that looks like, but it actually stems from ego. So I just want to make sure that, you know, my purpose here is to talk about your authentic journey and to give you some guidance and how to make sure that you're on that path and kind of checking in. So I will do that, right? So here we go. What it means to be on your authentic path means like living in your truth. And what are things that will potentially derail you from living your truth would be your ego. So, you know, a lot of people talk about ego and they're like, oh, that person has ego. But they don't really understand that everybody has ego, and it's really identifying when it starts to trigger. Okay. So in the book, I talk about the way that there's two entities, the ego and your true self, and they never really work together. And the ego is always going to be wanting to win. And it actually has the capability of derailing some really wonderful people from being who they're supposed to be. And I think that that's something that you have to take into consideration. So the question that popped up, is there such thing as good ego? I would question that. I think that you have to be able to identify what is driving the ego, right? At the end at the end of the day, hey Audley, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that you are doing it for you and not for others. So I will just jump into my own personal example with ego, and it really kicked in. I realized that I was driven by trying to feed the ego, like always trying to prove to other people that I was going to do it. I was going to be amazing. I was going to beat all odds. And when you're doing that, you take away from your own personal journey, right? Because it's like you're constantly needing to feed it. And there will always be more acknowledgments or accomplishments that you'll need to get. And it wasn't until I went on my own personal journey and identified, wow, I do have ego, then I started to refocus. And it wasn't about other people and what they think or whether or not they're going to be happy if I accomplish these things. It was about me and being fulfilled with what I was doing in order to be successful. Hence, writing a book, right? So no, I did that for me and basically to be able to share out information for other people to be aware of it. So the big call out that I have when it comes to ego is that sometimes we don't even know that we have it, right? We think that we're like functioning in our everyday life, and it's like, oh yeah, that person. We can identify very easily. Maybe you guys can put in the comments people that have ego, right? Like famous people where it really stands out of, you know, who stands out, what their ego, and it's always like a negative tone. But when I talk about ego that we all have, it is it's when it gets bruised easily, it doesn't play nice in the sandbox, and it's all about itself, right? So I don't know if we all can think of situations where, I know everyone on this call can, or this live can, think of situations where our ego might have gotten out of check, right? So sometimes the ego will get you to do things that are totally out of character of what you are normally like. So if it feels as though it's not winning in an argument, or, you know, someone's getting something and you might not. So it might promote like traits like jealousy and, you know, anger or resentment. Like these are not good things. The ego is not your friend. So when I saw the question pop up, is ego good? I don't know about that. I think that it depends what's driving you. And the drive should be, good ego would be driving from within, not to try and push others or try to be the best. And I think that that is the key to really identifying what is driving you in order to get your overall success. Okay? So, identify when ego kind of comes up. Okay? So I can give you examples. So think about your own personal lives, and when you get in a fight with someone, I was talking with someone about this yesterday. When you get in a fight with someone, is there always a winner? Someone always has to win, right? And that's the ego. The ego will do things sometimes that will make you act in a way that is so out of character for you. And will actually say things that you might not even mean. But the ego is competing to be the best, to the point that it's willing to destroy other people, right? And your relationships. And if you're not in a position where you can actually identify when that's coming into place, and we got a big problem, because you are not playing, like I said, it does not play nicely in the sandbox, and it is not trying to make you successful in a good way. It's like constantly having that need to be the best, but not in a good way, like by crushing others, right? Knocking others down, or not being kind at the end of the day. Like, really, if you think about it. So that's your personal life. And I know everyone has those examples. It could be with friends, partners, I don't know, siblings. But at the end of the day, it's the same behavior. So that behavior translates into the workforce. I can tell you, there is so many leaders that have ego. We all have ego, but they have ego and they haven't identified it. I was one of them. I didn't even realize that I was doing it, right? And an example would be having to be the smartest person in the room. Having to show that, oh, pick me, I have all the answers. I know everything, right? And when you do that, that actually takes away from the rest of the room, right? Because you don't need to be the smartest person in the room. You just need to be a happy contributor in the room and synergize and allow conversation to happen. But when you're sitting there and you're trying to push your way through to be the best, that's all ego. And that takes you away from your authentic path. If you guys can think of an example, another example of when ego might kick in, I'll give you another one top of mind, which I see a lot. I will have people that will come to me and they feel like, oh yeah, they want to tell me how great they were or how they solved all these issues in their role. But while they do that, they knock down the people that were in the role beforehand. When you're doing that, that does not make you look good at the end of the day. That is when the ego is speaking out and actually putting themselves in the forefront, right? Because the ego always wants to be the best. So I think it's important to make sure that we call it out. And I've even included some statements, okay? So if you guys can show me a like, if you have used any of these statements before, I would totally agree that it's taught early. And I talk about that in the book as well. So I would like, and it would be super fun if you guys could do this, okay? If you have caught yourself saying any of these statements, these are ego statements. You're in a fight or something, you're engaging with someone, I told you so, right? That's an easy one. That was my idea. I said that first, okay? Another one, I'm the smartest. I know it all, okay? And you're gonna listen to my opinion because I've got something to say about it. And where you could be potentially pushing down other people while you're doing that. That's all ego. This was my one that I caught myself. How dare you say that to me? Right? Yeah, the likes are starting. How dare you say that? And then, or do you know who I am? Do you know what I have to say? All ego statements. okay? And the reason why I bring them up is that when we talk about ego, everyone can talk theory around ego, but what's the practical application when we go into the workplace or when we're with our families, right? And I totally agree. All of us can say yes to all of them. But the reason why I share that with you guys is because I want you guys to catch yourself when it's happening, right? I want you to realize that you're on an authentic path. And in order to do that, you got to be like self-aware and genuine and like kind of focused in on how you're connecting with these other people in your life or how you're showing up. You don't want the ego to derail you from who you're supposed to be. And when that happens, the ego will walk away and kind of be like, yeah, I just won that fight. Yeah, that was amazing. Like I did an amazing job. But you crushed everyone around you in order to do it. And then what happens is that if you don't have awareness, okay, then you proceed in your path. And from a leadership perspective, how do you lead? You can't really lead around that, okay? Because people are not going to want to be around you at the end of the day. However, we're human, and if things happen and that self-awareness piece kicks in, then at least you will be able to reflect and catch yourself when those statements are starting to come into play. Because it does make a big difference. And especially if you want to show up well as a leader, okay? So, and I'll go back to this sentiment too. People are like, oh, Christina, you know, authentic you, what do you mean by that? You know, and I think if you are an authentic person and you show up well and you're grounded in who you are, you will be a better person or a better leader in the workplace because you are not going to allow things to derail you, such as your ego at the end of the day. Okay? So I have 5 key takeaways, and then if you guys have questions, we can chat, okay? 5 key takeaways that I want you to have for today. Identify, we all have ego. It's going to kick in, but you have to have awareness. Number 2, keep it in check. And when it's starting to come into play, learn to pause it or step away from that situation, okay? The third one is have awareness. Catch yourself in the moment or reflect afterwards and go back to it, okay? Yes, I know you have ego. What happens when you have 2 people that have ego like this, back and forth? It's very, it can get very heated, but as long as you have awareness around it, and we work at it all the time. No one's asking for perfection. And I want you to kind of identify as well that stop feeding it. Like I had to learn to stop feeding the ego, because when you do feed the ego, so remember I started out, you have ego and true self. True self is your authentic path. Whatever one you feed will win. But if you are feeding, like in the past, when I was feeding about, oh, I need to prove to everybody that, you know, I can do this, I'm going to prove everyone wrong, then I'm always going to be on that journey to prove someone wrong instead of being fulfilled and going on my purposeful path to do what I'm supposed to do. And that means that the true self is actually elevating and doing what it's supposed to do. Okay? And I think number 5 is feed your authentic self. Okay? Yeah, I would say, it's an internal battle all the time. But the more, it's like a muscle. The more you practice, the more you use it, the better it'll be at the end of the day. And I am sharing this with you guys because I've got 20 plus years experience in HR. And I wish we would have been talking about ego a long time ago, because this is a derailer for a lot of people. And I think we're set up that way, where people, our organizations are kind of set up that way, aren't they? Like where we need the best, who's the top performer. Everybody, you know, you want to make sure that you're keeping yourself in check. And as we're moving into the future of different types of leaders, people don't want to work for people that are ego driven anymore. And that are like just barking and saying that they're the winner, or they steal ideas, or they do things that are not, I don't know, not very favorable as a leader. So how do we get there to get to the next phase, to have leaders that are leading authentically and being grounded? Well, I think the biggest part is self-awareness and knowing that it's there. You just got to keep it in check. Okay? And I think that my major thing is, if you guys like what I have to say, remember I do have a book that's coming out in May. I'm giving all these little teasers about what's in the book before the launch from May 10th. So you'll see a little more of me. Are there any insecurities connected to ego? Absolutely. So remember, ego wants to be the winner, right? So it's all connected, right? So here's the story, right? The reason why I wrote the book is because I need people to start owning their story. When you own your story, you reduce the insecurities around it because you're empowered with your story. You are no longer the victim. You become the victor, and you are not insecure about it, right? Therefore, you're not going to need to prove things the same way, and the ego is not going to prevail like it would before. I hope that answers your question. Do you guys have any more?
People in management have bigger egos.
Yeah. Ego is with us. You're born with ego, right? And it's just more about the acknowledgement of when it surfaces, right? But we should be, I think society feeds ego rather than feeding our authentic self. I think it's harder to be our authentic self because society is always trying to have a winner, right? Like, oh, I'm the best. I went to university. I did this. Look at me, right? That's all feeding the ego. So I think that it's really a mindset shift of kind of figuring out what you're feeding at the end of the day. As for, Jim, as for your question around management, I hate to say it. Yeah. But you got to figure that that's the way the corporate structure has been set up, right? Like, it's been very hierarchical and it feeds it, right? Remember, keep it simple. Ego wants to be the winner at the end of the day. It will do anything to be the winner. So it's kind of like sometimes, and I think in the past, it was I was the boss, very traditional, dictatorial, you do as I say. That to me is very like ego driven. Whereas I think future work is shifting where it's going to be a little, okay, so ego can,
I'm Dave.
Okay. Hey, Dave. Okay. So can ego be a good thing? I am going to just speak from my personal experience. It depends what's driving it, right? So if you're saying, hey, ego, I'm doing really well. I'm doing well. That's funny. I was successful because I was ego driven. I want you to go deeper and ask yourself, what is driving it? Is it for you? If it's for you, that's fantastic. If it's to prove other people wrong or to kind of like, hey, look at me, I'm awesome, that is not good ego. That is unhealthy ego. And I think it's the fact that we don't talk about this stuff, right? So you don't even acknowledge that at the end of the day. Like, it took me 20 years to kind of really figure out that part of it from an ego perspective, that I had ego. I was like, I have ego. Oh, how is that even possible? But if I was always trying to do things to prove people wrong, then that's not healthy. Right? Yeah, and I would agree, Kristen, your intention behind what's driving you is very important. So also ego, like I said, it doesn't play nice in the sandbox, right? So it might actually, if you're trying to knock other people down, and hey, I'm asking you to look in the mirror, which is not comfortable sometimes, right? Am I kind of trying so hard to be the best person here that I'm knocking like 5 people down in order to get there? That's not cool. But it's the fact that to have the awareness and the discussion around it that makes a big difference. And is there any other questions and stuff? See, now I can see the questions. Anything else, guys? The reason why I really think that we need to talk about it more often is that we never did for a very long time, and a lot of leaders have derailed because of it. And my intention with the book is to make this information a little more accessible to everybody, because the answers are there, right? You shouldn't have to go to an executive coach to figure out that ego might be kicking in. You should really have a good surrounding of people and know that you can have that conversation about, ooh, am I on track? Oh, did I say some of those statements that are like really ego driven? And then have that self-awareness so you can set your path and stay to the path of your authentic journey. Okay. All right, guys. Do you guys have anything else before I go? I really appreciate you guys hopping on. And for those that watch it afterwards, I hope that you actually get stuff out of it. If you like it, just send a comment through. I really love looking at all this stuff after the fact. So I hope you got some tips here. And remember, keep the ego in check. And